After 84 lakhs of births and deaths, the involution process now begins. That is, the drop soul has to pass through the subtle world and the mental world in order to come to the seventh plane, the plane of God realization. The subtle world has got 3 planes, 1 to 3. The fourth is on the threshold between the subtle and the mental. The mental has got the 5th and the 6th planes. And then comes the 7th plane, the plane of God realization. When the sanskaras become less and less, then one begins to experience the subtle world. And then one can say that this involution process has begun. Each plane in the subtle world, like the first, the second and the third, in order to go from one plane to another, one has to pass through 7 lanes. And before reaching the heaven of the second plane, one has to pass through 14 by-lanes of that heaven. And then one comes onto that plane. During this process, one has to take several steps, or what are called kadams. Then rest for a little while, which are called, the places of rest are called gams. And then bigger stops are called mukams. So in the 14 by-lanes, there are 49 mukams. So from one plane to another, in order to pass, you have to pass through the 7 lanes. Then, before reaching the next plane, you have to pass through the 14 by-lanes of the heaven of that plane. One who starts experiencing the subtle world cannot experience the gross world or the mental world. So, before reaching the subtle world, one has to pass through the astral world, but that is after death. The pilgrim goes directly to the first plane. Now, the heaven of the first plane has got 3 sections. The first section is from the gross world. That pilgrim begins to see something of the subtle. With his gross eyes, he sees something, some colors, some lights of the subtle world. With his gross ears, he starts hearing things of the subtle world, what is called Nada Brahma. So, from the gross, one starts seeing something of the subtle. But this can only happen by the grace of the perfect master of the avatar. In the gross world, we have got 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, touch and taste. But in the subtle world, we have no touch and taste, only 3 senses. So, with the grace of the perfect master or the avatar, some souls from the gross world begin to see a little of the subtle world. And as far as I know, only 2 Baba lovers have had this experience. One was Kekobad, one of the monthly, and the other was Professor Hazra of Jabalpur. In 1958, on the 10th of July, when we were all there with Baba at Meherabad, Baba was giving darshan, and all of a sudden he looked into Hazra's eyes, and a beam of light, like a laser beam, flashed from Baba's eyes into his eyes. And from that moment, Mr. Hazra began to see Baba continuously all through the 24 hours. And when he sees somebody, he sees you, and at the same time he sees Baba's face. So, this is an experience from the gross world. He's seeing something of the subtle. That is the first heaven, or the first section of the first heaven of the first plane. The second part of this heaven is when the pilgrim comes there, he starts seeing circles of light. And these are very, very powerful circles of light, and with a central light. And in that central light, he sees the face of his Guru. If you had to read the life of Upasani Maharaj, when he was staying in the Khandoba temple at Shirdi, under the instructions of Shirdi Sai Baba, he was seeing these circles of lights. Then, the third section of the heaven, of the first plane, is when the pilgrim actually comes on the first plane. And now he can see long distances, quite things from a long distance. He can read the minds of people. So now the pilgrim has actually come on the first plane of the subtle world. The other two were, with his gross senses, he was seeing something of the subtle. Baba has said, then, he has not given in God Speaks the exact number of people on the first plane, but he has said that on the first plane and between the 7 planes there are 5,600 persons. Total there are 7 planes, and on the 7 planes there are 7,000 people, of which on the first plane and between the planes are 5,600. As evolution goes on, the pilgrim comes onto the second plane. In the second plane, we have what is the heaven and the hell. So, after death, as I've already said, one goes to the astral world for 72 hours or 40 hours to 72 hours, and then goes into the second plane, or the second heaven of the second plane, in which there is the heaven and the hell. If he has done good deeds, he goes to the heaven state. If he has done bad deeds, he goes to the hell state. Now remember, when we die and we go into the hell and the heaven states, with our subtle senses we are experiencing our gross sanskaras. This is very important. Then, because you are experiencing something on the subtle planes, you are experiencing with your subtle senses your gross sanskaras. So if your good sanskaras are in excess, you will experience the heaven state and then come back again, take another birth. Now, hell. Supposing you have done more bad deeds, then you go into the hell state. Now the hell is also differentiated into several types of hells. There is a higher type of hell. A higher type of hell means, in this life if you have done stealing, lying, promiscuity, gluttony, greed, jealousy, all these sins take you to hell, but it's the higher type of hell. Then who goes into the lower type of hell? Those who have committed suicides, murders, genocides, or the false gurus. These people go into the lower or the worst type of hell. And they stay there until the balance is practically done between the good and the bad sanskaras, and then they take another form. So, on the second plane, there are 666 people. On the second plane, the person can perform, or the pilgrim can perform small miracles. Like, supposing a tree is dry and dead, and he says, let fruits grow on it, and immediately the fruits will grow. Or there is a train moving, or an aeroplane going in the air, and he says, stop, and it will stop. Supposing there is a dry well, and he says, let it be filled up with water, and it gets filled up. If there is darkness, and he says, let there be light. So these are small miracles that the person on the second plane can perform. As evolution goes on further, he comes on to the third plane. There are 558 persons on the third plane. Here he can perform bigger miracles, like giving sight to the blind. Supposing a man is lame, has no limbs, or is lame, he can say, or give him limbs. And in rare cases, even a dead man, he can make him alive. Now, the heaven of this third plane again has 3 sections. In the first section lives Indra. Who is Indra? Indra is the king of all the angels, and he rules over the 330 million angels. Indra is a king. And who becomes an Indra? One who has practiced tantric yoga in this gross world, he becomes an Indra. And he stays as a king or as Indra for 4 cycles. Each cycle is of 26,000 years. So total 1,04,000 years. He will stay as an Indra or a king of over all the angels for 1,04,000 years. But after that he has to take another human birth and then progress further. In the second, this is the first section of the heaven of the third plane. In the second part of the heaven of the third plane are the angels of what we call the Devlok. And these are very, very pure beings and who work for God. So now who are these angels? This is not given in God Speaks. But during the descent from the beyond state, those drop souls who get stuck up in the mental world, they are called archangels. And those who get stuck up in the subtle world, they are called just angels. So these angels and archangels, they have still not taken a human form. And they are very, very pure beings who are working for God, doing the duties. All the things of this world are being managed by these angels, like the heat, the water, the temperatures. Everything in this world is being managed by these angels under the guidance of Indra. Now, these angels and these archangels, they have to take a human form after spending 104,000 years in that state. And then, that is the only one human birth they will take, and then they will get onto the seventh plane. So, this is what happens on the third plane. And Baba, among his lovers, had mentioned that Will and Mary Beckett of England, they were his archangels. At that time one didn't know what it really meant. We thought that they were very pure souls, but actually it meant that they were the drop souls who had come right from the mental world straight as human beings, and then in that one birth only they have reached the seventh plane. Now, further involution from the third plane to the fourth plane, and the fourth plane is the plane of full energy of God. The full power of God is over there, and there are only 56 persons on the fourth plane. This plane is wrought with a lot of trouble and also chances of falling down, and therefore the Bible calls it the dark night of the soul. That man or that pilgrim can use his powers to such a degree that he can create a new world. He can destroy this whole world. He is called a Kuber. A Kuber has very, very powerful eyes, and his eyes are always roving. They are always moving. If he keeps watching anything for a few seconds, that thing will burn to ashes. So, now the man or the pilgrim who has come on the fourth plane, if he tries to misuse his powers, because he has got these universal powers of God, the full power of God, as he can create a new world also, if he tries to misuse this power, then the Kutub or the person on the fifth or the sixth plane will control his mind, and he will help him and not to work those miracles. But in case, normally he submits himself to the fifth plane or the sixth plane man, or to the Kutub or to the Sadguru or the perfect master. But in some cases where he does not submit to them, and if the Sadguru is a Jamali type, and Jamali type means a very sober type of Sadguru, then he will bring him down from the fourth plane to human consciousness. But if he is of a Jalali type, a very, very hot-tempered Sadguru, then he will throw him down to stone consciousness. So, the fourth plane is the only plane from where you can fall back right up to the stone form. Now, remember, there is nothing like retrograde reincarnation. What does that mean? Once you have become a human being, you can never become an animal, you can never become a vegetable. But there are several exceptions to this rule. One is, on the fourth plane, the man can drop back to the stone form. Another is, a tantric can take up any form he likes. He can enter any animal also. And the third is, the ghosts. They are souls in the astral world who can take up any animal form, vegetable form, in order to take a revenge on the person he wants to take. So, these are the three exceptions on the fourth plane: the tantric and the one who has committed suicide and become a ghost. He can go into an animal or a vegetable to take revenge. But actually this is not a reincarnation, it's only a temporary phase. I remember having seen a tantric who used to always walk around the streets with a small dog. And at times, suddenly he would convert that dog into a tiger and people would run away from him. And after a little while again he would convert him into a dog. So, a tantric has got these powers. He himself can become a dog or an animal or anything he wants to. So, these are the three examples or the exceptions. From the fourth plane, a tantric or a ghost can take up lower forms lower forms than human beings. But otherwise a human being can never go into retrograde reincarnation into any of the lower kingdoms. Now, between the third and the fourth planes, there is a state called the Mukam-e-Herat, where the pilgrim becomes dazed. The joy of these planes is so great, not that I have experienced these, but I remember that a saint whom I had met, he would say that he could hear a little from the subtle world, a little sound from the subtle world. Though he was on the gross world, yet he could hear a little sound, and he'd say, Bharucha, every time I hear that sound, I become unconscious for 8 days. So you can imagine the intensity of that sound, that only the sound of the first plane can make a man unconscious for 8 to 10 days. So, this Mukam-e-Herat is a state where the pilgrim becomes completely dazed with the beautiful sights, the beautiful sounds, the beautiful scents that he sees. And in that dazed state, he becomes unconscious. Now, supposing he has his hand raised up, and he suddenly gets into this state of Mukam-e-Herat, then he will keep standing over there for months or days or years even, until a perfect master comes around and helps him and pushes him up to the fourth plane or down to the third plane. I remember in one place where one of the persons had gone into this Mukam-e-Herat. He was in the jungle, and because he had no consciousness of his body, ants began to eat up his flesh. So the villagers would come every day in the morning and make or put sugar all around him, so that the ants would eat the sugar and spare the body until that man would get up. So it is very, very rare that a person might die in this Mukam-e-Herat. Normally a perfect master or a Sadguru or somebody would come and relieve him of that state. So this is a very dangerous state also. Now we have finished the subtle world. The first 3 planes are the subtle world, the fourth is on the threshold, and we have seen the powers of the person on the fourth plane, and now we come to the fifth plane, which is the mental world. This is also called the Shiv-lok. Shiv, normally the people believe that he is the destroyer. Actually, Shiv means the destroyer of the mind and not the world. Shiv is destroying the mind slowly and slowly. On the 6th plane, the mind will be more destroyed. And finally, on the 7th plane, the mind will be completely destroyed, what we call as mano-nash. So, on the 5th plane, now we have entered the mental world, and the mental world has got 2 sections, thoughts and feelings. The 5th plane is concerned with thoughts. A person on the 5th plane who is called a wali. A wali is a friend of God. He controls the thoughts of everyone in the whole world. He can know the thoughts of anyone in the whole world. He can give thoughts to anybody in the world. Supposing a man over here in Navsari is on the 5th plane, he can give any thought he wants to anybody in America or anywhere around the world. This is the state. He can control the thoughts only. The mind has got 2 sections, I've just told you, the thoughts and the feelings. As he goes up, he will control on the 6th plane the feelings. Now, a wali, that is a 5th plane man, can bring up any person up to the 5th plane if he wants to. But how does he do it? By looking into his eyes or by whispering into his ears some sort of a mantra or something like that, and immediately that person can come up to the 5th plane. Remember, anybody on the planes can bring up another person up to that particular plane. He cannot take him higher up because he himself has not gone up. So, the wali, he needs the presence of the person in order to raise him up to his state. A person on the 5th and the 6th plane cannot perform miracles like the people on the 1st to the 4th planes. Why? Because he has no powers. He is only concerned with the mind. But if he wants to perform a miracle, he will control the thoughts of people on the 1st to the 4th plane and give him that particular thought, and that person will perform the miracle. Actually, it is an indirect way of performing a miracle. He himself cannot perform the miracle. Further evolution takes the pilgrim to the 6th plane, which is the plane of feelings, where that person, who is called a Pir now, or a Brahmalok, he can control the feelings of everyone in the whole world. Supposing a person has lost his wife, and he's very depressed, and he goes to a person on the sixth plane. That sixth plane man, only by looking into his eyes, will raise him up from his depression and make him happy and make him laugh, so he can control the feelings of everybody in the whole world. Also on the sixth plane, the third eye opens, which is called the Divya Drashti. This Divya Drashti is situated on the forehead, in between the eyes, a little above the eyelids, a little above the eyebrows. And this third eye opens on the sixth plane. And now he sees God everywhere. When he sees God everywhere, he doesn't see himself as God. And therefore, on the sixth plane, there is that burning love of separation between the lover and the beloved. However much we may try to love Meher Baba, we can never love him as the person on the sixth plane. That pilgrim. So, it's only on the sixth plane that the real love, the longing for union with God comes. And how does a person on the sixth plane is called a peer, I've already told you that. How does he pass on his powers to somebody he wants to bring up to the sixth plane? He is not like the wali who looks into the eyes or speaks into the ears, but he may drink tea and give it to the lover, and by giving that tea which he has drunk, he will raise him up to the sixth plane. Or he may give him one of his clothes, and then when he gives that cloth to that lover, that person, when he wears that cloth piece, he'll come to the sixth plane. Remember, this is exactly what happened with Shirdi Sai Baba. His guru gave him one of his kafnis, and that Shirdi Sai Baba would always wear like a turban on his head. You have always seen Shirdi Sai Baba's pictures. He has a big cloth tied up to his on his head with a big knot at the back. That is the kafni of his guru. And so he was brought up to the sixth plane in that way. Now remember that the sixth plane man is not seeing with his gross eyes. In God Speaks, it is mentioned, he has the feeling of seeing God everywhere. He doesn't see God with his gross eyes. He feels that, because it's the sixth plane is the plane of feelings, he feels that he is seeing God everywhere. The sixth plane man also cannot perform any miracles, but he can control the feelings of everybody in the whole world, in the gross world and also in the subtle world. On the fourth, on the fifth, and on the sixth plane, in each of these planes there are 56 people. Now comes the jump from the sixth to the seventh, and no pilgrim can go from the sixth to the seventh. Anybody can go with his yoga or other practices right up to the sixth plane, but never beyond that. It's only with the grace of the perfect master of the avatar that the person can jump from the sixth plane to the seventh plane. This is the end of chapter 3. Now we come to the chapter 4, the evolution of consciousness. This is the longest chapter in God Speaks, and this is where most people cannot understand. Baba says in this chapter that in the beyond state of God, that is the state before the creation came into being, there was only God, and that God existed as the God is state. We can say it was in a state of vacuum. There was no consciousness, there was nothing in that. But when the whim occurred in that beyond state, God came down to the beyond state. Now, as soon as this whim came out from the Om point, what happened? If we call the God in the beyond state as everything, because only God existed, we can say he was everything. His shadow escaped from that Om point and projected out into this creation as this creation which we call as the world. So, the nothing projected out and became the nothingness. This nothingness is nothing but the false nothing which you see in the world, and which we call as the false or as the real everything. This is a little complicated. Again, I repeat that. The shadow of the beyond state, that is the nothing. Now, a shadow is always nothing. If you are there, you are reality. But your shadow can never be real. It's only because you are existing, therefore the shadow is existing. So, This nothing which was the shadow of the everything of the beyond state, this shadow escaped, or this nothing escaped from that Om point and manifested as this nothingness. This nothingness is this creation which you are seeing. So actually this is the false everything which you are seeing, which you falsely believe it is the real everything. I give you an example. Once we were sitting with Baba in the Mandalay Hall at MeherBabaLibrary, and Francis Brabazon, Francis Brabazon was sitting there also, and Baba said, supposing, we were discussing this point, and Baba said, supposing Francis goes to sleep just now, and in his dream state, he sees that he has gone to London and he's seeing the Buckingham Palace and the Parliament Houses and Big Ben and all that, Trafalgar Square and all that. And he feels really that he's in London and looking at all these things. But then in his dream, Baba comes and tells him and says, Francis, you're not in London, you're in Meherabad or Meherzad sitting here. And he says, no, Baba, how can I believe that? I'm looking at all this, I can feel it, I can touch it, I can do everything. How can I accept your statement? And Baba says, no, this is a dream, this is not reality. And then after some time when he wakes up from his dream, he realizes really what Baba had said, it was a dream. It wasn't a reality. He was actually sitting in Meherzad, dreaming. So similarly, we are also dreaming in this world, that this world is the real everything. Actually, it is a dream. And Baba has said that we've got to wake up from this awake dream state. When we go to sleep, we have dreams also. That is a sleeping dream state. Now this is an awake dream state. So even in this awake dream state, we are dreaming that we are seeing the world and we got a wife and children and cars and business and this and that. This is also, Baba says, is a dream, because the whole creation has come out of this nothing. So you have to come up to a stage, what is called the supra-awake state, where you will realize that this whole creation is but nothing. So the nothing escapes from the beyond state, becomes the nothingness. This nothingness becomes this false everything, which we feel is the real everything. But on the seventh plane, when you come to the seventh plane, this whole creation, this whole nothingness or this whole nothing, everything disappears because your mind disappears. All this is existing only because of your sanskaras. If your sanskaras finished, vanished out and your mind is finished, that is Manu Nash on the seventh plane, then you come to what is called this supra-awake state where there is nothing left. Absolutely this false everything which you are seeing, this world, is completely finished, is vanished. So at that time, what do you experience? You experience the original nothing, which had escaped from the beyond state. And once you experience that beyond state nothing, the real nothing, that is the real nothing. This is the false nothing which we are experiencing just now. So that real nothing, once that is experienced, immediately after that, you will come to the state of I am God. That is, you begin to know that you have always been God, and that all this that you have gone through, the different kingdoms, the stone, the metal, the vegetable, the human beings, everything, was only a dream and nothing but a dream. When the nothing escaped from the Om point, with it came the infinite triune nature of God, that is Sat Chit Anand, power, knowledge and bliss. This also got projected out with the nothing. Now, this infinite triune nature of God, now, in the world, it becomes the finite triple nature. The power becomes the energy, the knowledge becomes the mind, and the bliss becomes the body. So, the infinite triune nature now becomes finite triple nature. On the seventh plane, the finite triple nature is completely wiped out because of the sanskaras being wiped out. And so the soul now will experience the real nothing or the vacuum state. In this state, there is not even experience that it is God. There is no experience of the worlds. In short, there is no experience at all, only of the vacuum state. So one can say that God doesn't exist in this state. But it is never possible that God never exists, and therefore one can say that God exists in this stage as consciousness. And this has to be followed by the I am God state. Baba has compared the beyond state of God as a man in sound sleep state. In the sound sleep state, his mind is not working, he's not dreaming, there's nothing at all. But when the whim occurs, he starts dreaming. So he has come to the beyond state. Now in his dream, he dreams that he's become the gas, stone, metal, vegetable, etc. And finally, on the seventh plane, this dream finishes. And therefore, he now experiences the absolute vacuum state of God. So, in the first stage of the seventh plane, there is the experience of only the vacuum. God, in this state, in the Sufi terminology, is said to be in the state of fana. Fana means absorbed or merged in. He is not conscious that he is God, he is not conscious of the world at all. This is also called nirvana. But this is immediately followed by the state of nirvikalpa, where the consciousness is now focused on I am God. From the absolute vacuum state of nirvana, he has come to the I am God state of nirvikalpa, or the anal haq state, or the aham brahmasmi state. And such a person in this state is called a madzub, and the state is called madzubiyat. He is not conscious of the gross, subtle or mental worlds. He is only conscious that he is God. He is drowned in God as I am God. This is the end of the first journey. The first journey begins right from where the drop soul becomes a gas to the second stage of the seventh plane, that is nirvikalpa. Now, from this state of I am God, where he is only conscious of I am God and not conscious of the world, if he comes down to human consciousness again and establishes his life in God, then that is called baka. The second stage of fana, that is nirvikalpa, is called fana phila. So first fana, then fana phila. And when he establishes his life in God and becomes conscious of the world, he is said to be in baka. And since this baka is of reality, it's called baka bila. So baka means living the life of God as man. Now, until he becomes completely conscious of the world, there is another intermediate state called the turiya avastha, where he is sometimes as a madzub and sometimes as a salik. A salik is completely conscious of the three worlds and also conscious that he is God. But the turiya avastha, pilgrim, is sometimes conscious that he is a madzub and sometimes he is conscious of a salik. So, he is on the intermediate stage. Once he comes down completely to human consciousness or the world consciousness, then he becomes established as a salik. And that state is called the sulukyat state. Remember when Meher Baba was kissed by Baba Jan, he was brought to this superconscious state. But then to come down to world consciousness, it took him 7 years. And he had to go to the other 4 perfect masters. So, establishing in the life of God is called baka. And this baka of reality is called baka bila. So now, we are seeing the 4 journeys that the soul has to pass through. The first journey starts from the gas state and ends at fanafila, or the I am God state. The second journey begins from the fanafila to the bakabila, where he is established in the life of God. The third stage is when the salik becomes a perfect master and lives the life of a perfect master, helping others to become God-realized also. That's the third journey. And the fourth journey is, after the perfect master drops his body, that dropped soul, consciously and individually as God, the infinite, experiences the I am God state. So these are the 4 journeys. Now, remember on the 6th plane, I've already told you, there is the Divya Drashti is opened up, and that sees God everywhere. But when he jumps from the 6th to the 7th plane, this Divya Drashti becomes Prabhu Drashti. The Prabhu Drashti is The soul itself sees everyone as God and itself as God also. Remember, in the sixth plane there is also duality. But on the seventh plane there is no duality. There is no lover and the beloved. There is no seeker and the sought. But on the seventh plane, this Divya Drashti becomes the Prabhu Drashti, where the soul itself sees itself as God and everything as God. So now I recapitulate all the stages of the seventh plane. The first is the Fana, where he is just absorbed in God. He is not conscious of the world, he is not conscious he is God. That is the state of Nirvana. Followed by Fanafila or the Majzub, where he is only conscious I am God, but he is not conscious of the world. Then the Salik, who is conscious of the world and is living the life of God as man. And before he becomes a Salik, he comes to the intermediate state of Turiya, where he is sometimes a Majzub and sometimes a Salik. Now these Saliks, who are God in human form, walking about the world, they are of three types: a Kamil, a Kamil, and a Mukam-e. A Kamil can make one person up to his state, and therefore he is called a Kamil. An Akmil is one who can make several people up to his state of a Salik. And a Mukamil can make many people up to his state, and so he is called a Mukamil. But remember, a Salik, though he has the infinite powers of God, the power, knowledge and bliss of God, yet he has no authority to use these powers. While a perfect master, after the Salik becomes a perfect master, he has the same powers, knowledge and bliss like the Salik, but he has the authority to use these powers, and therefore he can give God realization to anyone. The Salik cannot give God realization to anyone. Baba has said that in each age, an age consists of 65 to 125 years, which we call as Kal. So a perfect master lives approximately 65 to 125 years, and after him the next age begins, and 11 such ages make up a cycle, which is called a Yuga. So if the 11 ages are of 65 years, then it comes to 700 years. And if the ages are of 125 years, it comes to 1400 years. So total number of perfect masters in the 11 ages in a full cycle are 55. 5 in each age, and 11 such ages make a cycle, so 55. And the avatar in the last cycle comes, so he becomes 56. So total 56 God-realized souls. Now, Baba has said that in each age there are also 56 God-realized souls. 3 are in the Majzub state, 5 are the perfect masters, that makes 8, so the remaining 48 are Saliks. After the perfect master drops his body, one of the Saliks becomes a perfect master. So, after God realization, what are the possibilities? We can see now that as soon as the pilgrim comes to the seventh plane, he drops his body and enjoys the God state. I am God state. That's the end of his physical body, the mental body, everything. In the second time, the body is not dropped, but retained for some time, but he is unconscious of the world, and so he is called a Majzub. The third one, that he retains his body and is conscious of the world, he is called a Salik. And the fourth one, from the Salik, he becomes a perfect master. That is the end of the fourth chapter. Now we come to the fifth chapter. Parmatma is Atma in reality. So, Parmatma and Atma are not different. They are the same. In that infinite ocean of the beyond state, all the drops are contained in the ocean, and so they are one with the ocean. They cannot be outside the ocean. For example, Baba gives us, think of an ordinary ocean that you see in the world. It has an upper surface, a lower surface, and boundaries. So all the drops in that ocean are in the ocean, and they are one with the ocean. They are the ocean itself. But if some of the drops feel that they are different from the ocean, then it's only ignorance. Supposing we think of an infinite ocean that occupies all space. There are no worlds, there are no suns, there are no moons, there is nothing, only one infinite expanse of water. So from that infinite ocean, if it is possible to bring out a drop and put it somewhere, it takes a shape and a form, and so you can call it a drop. But if that ocean is infinite, it is impossible to bring out a drop and put it somewhere. There is no one to bring it out, and there is no place to put it. So, in short, if God is infinite, then all the drops in that infinite ocean of God are contained in the Parmatma itself, and therefore every Atma is in the Parmatma and is in reality the Parmatma itself. So, the Atma, the Jivatma, why does it feel it is a Jivatma? It is because of the sanskaras. These sanskaras falsely make the Jivatma or that drop soul feel that it is different. Now in that infinite ocean, supposing some part of the ocean solidifies into an iceberg, and this floats about into the ocean and tells all the different drops that are feeling that they are different from the ocean, that, hey, little drops, you're not the ocean, you're not the drops, but you're the ocean itself, and I'm the ocean also. And they will say, no, it's not possible. You're so limited, you're so small. How could you be the ocean, and how could we be the ocean also? So they do not accept it. So the iceberg goes all around into the ocean, telling the different drops, hey, you're the ocean itself, but they don't accept it. Finally, when the iceberg melts, then the drops will say, gosh, he was the ocean. Similarly, the avatar is no one but that ocean taking up a form in front of you so that you can see him. So it is God in human form. And when he comes as the avatar, he tells you, I am the ocean, I am the God, and you are also God. And the people cannot accept his statement, and therefore they fight with him, they crucify him, they do also persecute him, and they ridicule him, because they cannot accept his statements.